wildness back in the turn of the century.
They started on the Monte Cristo Hill. Of course, they only had a toe strap to hold their ski on. Oleus Gelnus and all of his cohorts, they leaped off the hill for 37 and 47 and 57 feet. They got a leather that went around the back of the ski and held the boot down, and pretty soon they were jumping 70 and 80 feet.
There was some skiing in a place which is now defunct called Phoenix at Mining Town. Across the line there was skiing at that time, in Spokane, Cle-Elum and those places. Ewald Engen.
He was a ski jumper, wasn't he?
Yeah, a ski jumper and
cross country.
And cross country.
Yeah, they didn't have slalom much in those
No.
days.
There was hardly anything during the First World War, and it was back in 1924 and 26 that it really got going again.
Being as he knew what to look for, he walked all over the hills here and finally chose that hill for the ski hill.
We built a big new ski hill in Princeton, which ended up with a 200-foot hill. Revelstoke and Leavenworth was the only two bigger hills I knew of at the time.
They had a train load of sleeping cars that come up from Vancouver.
Railway cars parked on the siding where they could all sleep and stay. And
bring a whole pile of officials and skiers and tourists.
It was a big thing at one time.
oh yes, there was big doings.
They built the takeoff at the bottom of the hill after, and they turned somersault with their jumping skis.
The first meets we went to were in Vancouver. They had a little small hill on Hollyburn. I jumped on that, and I had a little bigger hill on Gross Mountain. For the early years, all my competitors were practically Vancouver skiers, because throughout most of BC it's a little harder to get to. So we went to Vancouver by Kettle Valley Railway.
They would invite guys like Bob Limburn, Hans Gunnarsson, and all the very top jumpers.
Jumping started, like I said, with Andy Johnson forming the club here, and that was the Scandinavian influence, and basically the jumpers. But that part of it is what annoyed Pop Irwin, that it was only for the older people. It was nothing for the kids.
Engineer from the Granby Company, instead of making a rope tow, he set it up with cable.
Ole Johansson used to live in Princeton.
And there was another fellow by his name was Johnny Leeds. He and Mo Broughton would go head to head on the Princeton ski hill. But Princeton was a big ski town.
Our jump hill was the second best in Canada, and it was number one when it come to training. The only one that beats it was Revelstoke Hill, but had so much of a snow problem, and we didn't have that snow problem here.
I came from Revelstoke. Nels Nelson was the world's champion in 1924 until about 1930. That was the world's biggest hill. That was a suicide hill.
He was a champion and competitive as all get out.
He gave me my first skis when I was 4 years old.
How the hell can I jump if I don't have any skis to still jump on? He had a fantastic life. He skied all over. Total awe because of the jumping. The times they used to have on the ski train from Revelstoke to Princeton. Emma was my mom. Don't you tell Emma. And of course I never ever did tell Mom, but I wasn't a stupid kid.
10 kids.
Oh yeah, Mom said she had a terrible time keeping the
You would
women
have
away.
thought that would have taken up most of his time, but it did not.
Rebecca and Henny jumped. They jumped with Isabelle Coursure, who was an exhibition jumper, and we used to call her the ladies' world champion ski jumper, which she could have been if there was a class for women jumpers in those days. Tom O'Bratton, Dad, there was about 4 or 5 Canadian ski jumpers that were the best in the world. Dad was still winning at that time. He'd won the world record 7 years in a row. Canadian government said, no sportsmen of ours are going steerage. So they didn't go. Yeah, they didn't go. The government didn't back them. His whole life was skiing. Totally.
He wanted to be an amateur all his life because to get into the Olympics you had to be an amateur. See, in those days, eh? But in those days the government didn't sponsor it.
Big movie company. They had Sonia Henney on contract doing this Lake Placid thing. They had come to Dad and they said, we want you to star in the movie with Sonia Henney. He says, that's not my life. My life is skiing. I'm not using my life to make a movie with Sonia Henney. And Mom was just furious because she had these 10 kids and the depression. And
that kept the family kind of broke.
He slipped in the mud on skis. Couldn't do competitive skiing anymore. And he would meet all these interesting people that used to be at the house. Mom got really good at fancy silver tea services. And lo and behold, it's the Prince of Wales. And him and Dad were the best of friends. When we were little kids in the 30s, he must have had about 300 at least silver cups by that time, trophies. And everybody said, whatever happened to all Nels's cups?
Yeah, that's Bob Limburn. He broke Nelson's record. And it was called a suicide hill, and they shouldn't be recognized. I was there when this happened. Right in the middle of a jump, he just collapsed, and that he had terrible concussion, and they thought he was going to die.
We'd hike up, take lunches, and hike up to the ski hill. Bob Limburn was always there. In fact, I was there the day he took that dreadful fall.
Occasionally he'd make a big long jump, run at one real good style. But he fell a lot too.
There was nobody fun that I know of.
So they sold his horse and his equipment and everything he owned to get enough money to buy a ticket to get him back home.
He's the guy whose record in the Winter Olympics, 50 kilometers, has never been beaten for a Canadian.
These belong to Oleus Gelnus. They're 11 feet long.
He did cross-country skiing and ski jumping, and the downhill and slalom and things that we know now were just in their infancy. The first downhill race was in the Olympics, and it was in 1936.
I'll show you the difference. Now this ski, to bend it, that's about all you could bend. When I got these ones, look at this. You could go through the powder.
So alpine skiing sort of sprang into life, I guess you might say, in the late 30s.
Taught skiing to the Lord Lovat Scout Regiment that they brought over from Scotland.
That was the tank regiment. 30-ton Sherman tanks.
Became a navigator with the Pathfinder Corps, Lancasters.
That was first sight. Really?